Hello, everyone. I'm Bohdan Shestakov, Engineering Director here at Cyclum. Today, we are going to talk about something that is making everyone a little bit nervous. We'll talk about Big Boss that is watching. We will talk about surveillance, AI, and the future of how we work. So why am I the one talking to you about this? I've been in this industry for 15 years. I've gone from writing the code and building high performance engineering teams and scaling them up to over 1,000 engineers. And you can imagine when you manage the team of 1,000 engineers, you face a very specific problem: invisibility. You physically cannot see what everyone is doing. You cannot know if the product is being built correctly just by watching around the office, especially when there is no one in the office. I specialize in scaling product development from concept to market, and I've seen the desperate desire managers to measure productivity. I have sat in the chair of this big boss. I know the temptation to micromanage, especially using tools. And today, I want to tell you why that is a trap. I think I can interact with the audience, and before we can start, I have a quick question for you. By putting thumbs up, I think it's a number one. How many of you right now are pretty sure your company is monitoring you in some shape or form? Try to press if you can hear me. I'm not sure about that, but let's try. Yeah. Okay, probably some of you. And if we'll use the same way, and you can show me how many of you are comfortable with that. I believe it will be definitely less. That's why we are here. And I want to start with two pieces of news for you. One is the bad news, and another one, I would call it as a good news. So first one, the internet knows almost everything about you. Google knows what you search for at 2 a.m. Instagram knows which ads you stop scrolling. Amazon knows what you buy before you even realize you need it. We have accepted this. This is our private lives are now transparent. We trade our data for convenience. We let the algorithms watch us because we get a better TikTok feed in return. But then there is a good news. Historically, your employer knows far less about you. Once you log into work, you are effectively a black box. They know you're online on Slack. They know you pushed some code. They know you showed up to the daily stand-up. But do they know if you are inspired? Do they know if you are staring at the screen for 2 hours trying to fix a bug? Or staring at the screen for 2 hours watching YouTube videos? They don't know yet. And here is a reality check. This gap is closing. The tools the advertisers use to track your shopping habits are now being retooled to track our coding habits. The AI that predicts what movie you want to watch is being trained to predict if you are going to quit your job in the next months. We are moving from the era of management to era of measurement. And this is happening not in the future. This is happening right now. Let's take a look on some numbers. According to the recent studies, 78% of the companies now use some form of digital employee monitoring. So if you have 10 friends working in tech, 8 of them are being tracked right now. And this is moving fast. 71% of all employees are digitally monitored. But this is the thing. Look at the growth rate. That is a 30% jump from 2024. So it's not just a gradual trend, it's an explosion. We aren't just seeing more monitoring, we are seeing a fundamental shift in how companies define work. Gartner reports that 7 out of 10 large employees are adopting these tools specifically to redefine productivity. And redefining productivity is what corporates would say for we don't trust that the old ways of measuring you work anymore. So how we are going to tackle this today? We are going to break it into 4 key chapters. And the first chapter will be about why it's happening now. We will look at the perfect storm of technology and economics that made this just inevitable. Second, what is actually being watched, and we will look under the hood. It's not just keystrokes anymore, it's sentiment, tone, and patterns. Which path you can choose from. We will look into the 2 paths of leadership can take, the controller and the coach, and I will give you some examples of how good and bad look like. And finally, what it means for you. I will give you some sort of a playbook on how to survive and even profit in this environment. Okay, let's move on. And let's start with the question, why now? People have been lazy since the dawn of the time, and managers have been paranoid since the dawn of the time. So why 2025 is the year of surveillance exploded? Well, as I said, it wasn't just one thing, it was a perfect storm and the combination of 3 major trends. First, the post-pandemic normalization of the remote work. So 71% of us are now either hybrid or remote. This created a visibility gap for management. Managers frankly panicked. They couldn't see people working. Second one, it's that the technology got really good and really fast. 5 years ago, if a boss wanted to spy on you, they had to watch a screen recording. That's boring and expensive. A human manager can't watch 50 developers. But AI changed the math. Pattern recognition at scale become visible. Now you don't need a human. AI can just digest terabyte of Slack logs, Jira tickets, and Git commits and spot anomalies just instantly. It can tell if your typing rhythm just has changed. It can tell if your code commits happen later in the day than usual. And the cost of this surveillance is near zero. And when something becomes cheap, companies just buy it and use it. And the third thing that leads us to intense business pressure, the question used to be easy. Is Bogdan at his desk? If yes, he's working. Now the question, how do you manage people you can't see? But there is a deeper layer here even. We are in an efficiency economy. CFOs are now looking at the developer's salary line item in the budget, which is probably huge, and asking, are we getting 100% utilization from these people? When money was cheap, nobody cared about 2 hours spent on the coffee. Now companies want to squeeze every drop of value. That creates the pressure to measure everything. We've just covered why they're doing this, but the terrifying part is what they actually looking at. It's not just counting how many emails you send. It goes much, much deeper. Let's first look at some data. If I'm a manager and I buy a surveillance suite, what exactly am I buying? What specific data points being added into my dashboard? And we can start from the basic one, the activity metrics. This is the primitive stuff. It's keystrokes per hour, some mouse movements, application toggling. This is the layer that treats you, software engineer, as like a typist. It assumes that if your fingers are moving, you are working. We know that this is false statement, that sometimes the hardest work happens when you are staring on the ceiling, but the tools track it anyway. But it doesn't stop there. There are 4 buckets, as I said, of data available to the employers today. And the second one is temporal data. When did you log in? How fast did you respond in Slack? How long were your idle time? This all can be tracked. The output data, the code itself, right? The commits you made, the pull requests you created, the Jira tickets you finished. And the last one, this is the communication piece, and this is the big one with all the emails that you sent, with all the chats that you answered, and yes, even meeting recordings. As you know, AI can transcribe every Zoom meeting now. It can create a searchable database of everything you have ever said in the meeting. Now I want to be clear. Data is not the enemy. There are, so to say, good tools. These tools will focus on diagnosing the system, not monitoring the person. They will measure the team level outcomes. And you probably heard of them. If not, those things are like DORA metrics, which can help you to track the deployment frequency, lead time, and other, as well as flow metrics, which track your cycle time or work in progress load. And if lead time is high, it doesn't mean that Bohdan is lazy. It means our CI/CD pipeline is probably slow, or our QA process is probably a bottleneck or being bottlenecked. These tools are designed to find this friction and eliminate the struggle. And when you look into platforms like LinearB, Jellyfish, or even GitLab with their analytics, they can measure these things, and they can measure them, and they really matter for the engineering health itself. And then there are, so to say, questionable tools. The industry would call them as a bossware. This is a new term, relatively new term. And their goal is not to improve the process. Their goal is to enforce compliance and verify the activity. They will track your individual activity. They will take your screenshots every 5 to 10 minutes. They will track your keystrokes and which websites you are opening. And some things like Amazon's computer vision stuff that is working on the warehouses, they can even track the people moving there. And I believe it soon will be in the offices as well, if these people will not listen to my talk. Okay, I'm totally on your side here. This is a creepy thing. And now you might be thinking, I can beat those tools. I can find a way how to move my mouse to look I'm productive, or I can create a script that will simulate that I'm typing. But you kind of right. These things are primitive, right? But you need to understand that this is a screaming emergency siren for a toxic culture. And the real secret is this big brother isn't just a spy, it's a data scientist. The danger isn't that they see what you are doing. The danger is that they are analyzing your patterns and guessing what you are thinking. Let me give you one corporate example. This is how things just gone wrong. Let's take this. This is a real story about Microsoft productivity score and how it was a disaster. Microsoft launched a feature in Office 365 that gave the administrators a productivity score of people. And on the surface, it looked helpful. We will look how our team adopting Teams. It tracked emails sent, it tracked meetings you attend, it also tracked how you are using this app. But there was a catch. It allowed managers to drill down to the individual level. So manager could log in and see a dashboard where they will see Jane Doe turned on camera on 0% of her meetings. Or John Doe sent 42 emails this week, which is down 10% from the last week. So essentially, it tried to turn the human collaboration into a leaderboard. And the tech world, for sure, it's exploded. employees and advocates screamed that that was marked as a surveillance and it was covered with analytics. Microsoft fortunately realized that this is a mistake really fast, and within only a few days, their corporate VPs issued a public apology and they removed the ability to track individuals, so they basically were unnamed anymore. And this is just one example, and we've touched on the tip of this iceberg. We've discussed all these obvious things that are happening. But what about this 90% of that iceberg that is just invisible? This is the things that is non-obvious, and those are that pattern analytics. This isn't just watching your activity, it's analyzing your patterns. And I'm suggesting to have a look on these 3 examples that probably would terrify you. And the first one is the keystroke dynamics. I referred it to this previously, but just for you to understand this. This is not just what you type. It's more about how you type. AI will analyze your rhythm, the rhythm of your keystrokes, and the flight between the keys, the pressure you use. Why? Because they claim that they can detect cognitive states, and it's kind of fair thinking. But they claim they can tell if you're tired or if you're stressed, if you're distracted. Imagine an HR dashboard that flags that you as a high burnout risk just because your typing rhythm slowed down on Thursday afternoon. And even deeper, automated sentiment analysis. Yeah, AI models now can scan your pull requests, comments, and Slack messages, or even your emails, and they can detect if you are being negative or toxic. And it creates even so-called a chilling effect. If I know that bot is grading my positivity, am I going to leave a critical review on a bad piece of code? Or am I going to say, this architecture will break production? Or am I going just type, looks good to me, and that's it? Doesn't sound safer. When we optimize the politeness over truth, software quality dies. Bugs go to production because engineers are afraid to be flagged as toxic by an algorithm that doesn't understand sarcasm or technical debate. And finally, the collaboration map. The AI doesn't need to read your messages. It just needs the metadata. Who talks to whom, how often, in what channels. From this, it builds a collaboration map and can objectify or even identify key influencers, knowledge silos, or even bottlenecks. And just think about it. I'm assuming here we have senior devs or tech leads who feels that they are spending all day just answering in chat or emails right now. And this bot will label you as a bottleneck, and your value as an engineer, as an expert, will be reframed as a system failure. Okay, we have talked about the technology. Now let's talk about the philosophy. Every leader in this room is standing at a crossroads. You have access to all these tools, and the question is not if you will use data, but how will you use it? How will you use it, yeah? And you have 2 paths. The first one is the controller. This option is person who is obsessed with surveillance. His fundamental question is, this person is working. Second path is more focused on diagnostics. His fundamental question is our process is working? And this is a fundamental difference in this philosophy. Let's drill down into the first one, into the controller path. As I told you, this manager tries to solve this invisibility by forcing visibility. They assume that there is low trust in the team. They believe that if they can't see you typing, you're probably stealing from the company. The toolkit is exactly what developers fear. It's not about outcomes, it's about inputs. It logs your keystrokes, it tracks your mouse movements, your screenshot, doing the screenshots from your screen, and logs every app you use. What happens when you treat professionals like children? It triggers the Goldhart law. And this is, I will read it and explain it to you. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And the best way to explain it in the simple terms, imagine, and I think in most companies we have it, employees need to pass the mandatory trainings. And employees might rush through this mandatory training to meet the target of finishing this mandatory training. But they will still lack the critical understanding of this procedure or the process that they should have been listened to, because they needed to hit the target. Or another one, if your organization is mandating the API documentation, it can end up with many poorly written descriptions, as employees simply provide a minimum text just required to meet this requirement. And it also creates another part, which is antagonistic behavior of a cat and mouse game. It's basically, it will incentivize the performative working or looking busy over the deep productive work, actually solving the problems. And ultimately, it will burn out people. But it's not just annoying, it can be legally and ethically disastrous. Let me give you 3 examples of quick stories where it just doesn't work. The first one, it's the story about Amazon recruiting AI tool that they have created. A few years ago, they decided that they need to create a tool that will help them to automate the search of the talents. And they built the AI to screen the resumes. Looks like a simple task. They trained their model on the historical data, on the 10 years of their hirings histories. But they faced a problem. The tech industry is historically was male dominated. So the AI looked at the patterns and taught itself a simple rule. Men are good candidates, women are risky candidates. It started penalizing resumes that included the word women's, like women's chess club captain, or it even downgrades candidates from all women's colleges. They tried to automate culture selection, but they just automated their own biases. They had to scrap this project completely, removing it. And this is what happens when you let a black box make a human decisions. This is the first story. And the second story is kind of recent one. And this is a real study. You can even find it on the internet or ask your AI assistant. And this is really fascinating study in terms of Cornell Institute University. They were having they wanted to answer the simple question. Does being watched by AI make your work easier or harder? They took more than 1,000 of participants and gave them a creative task, brainstorming task. There were two groups, and one group was monitored by a human manager, and another group was monitored by an AI manager. Now you might think human watching you is probably more stressful because humans are judgmental, but the result were exact opposite. The group being watched by the AI didn't just perform worse, they actively rebelled. When the researcher asked for the feedback after the task, the people monitored by humans had a criticism of rate of like circa 7%. But the people monitored by AI, that number just skyrocketed to over 30%. And the lesson that this surveillance made them feel a loss of autonomy. It made them less creative and even more stressed. It proves that the bossware is a bad thing for business. When you replace a human manager with an algorithm, you don't get an efficiency. You probably will get just a resistance. And the last story of how you should not use AI, and this is probably the most recent one. It is from the Air Canada. And this is probably the lesson of liability. There was a customer, Jake, who asked Air Canada through the chatbot that they have on their website about the bereavement fares for a funeral. And this AI hallucinated a new policy as it was not able to find it internally. And it told this guy that he could apply for a refund within 90 days of the travel. But the real policy said that he had to apply before he traveled. The company lawyers tried to argue in the court that the chatbot was a separate legal entity and they were not responsible for whatever this chatbot was saying. But the judge, unsurprisingly, didn't buy that. Air Canada has held liable for this bot mistake. Now imagine your new AI HR bot telling a developer the wrong thing about his pay or leave or performance review. The liability will be there and can be really real. Okay, we've talked about the controller path and the stories connected to that. Now let's talk about another path, which I call coach path. He has a completely different philosophy, and this one is about the high trust. And the goal is not to monitor people, but to diagnose the system. The assumption is that our developers are brilliant, but our process is broken. And let's find this friction. This path uses a completely different toolkit. This toolkit will be focused on the team outcomes. As we mentioned previously, those tools will be around DORA metrics or about the flow metrics or these things like DX Score 4 as well. And with them, with this set of tools, it can help leaders to see where the friction is. What's the impact? It aligns the teams and with the business goals. It can improve general developer experience, and it can enable the data-driven decisions about the process, not over the people. But there is a single most important warning of this talk. You cannot use coach tools as a control tools. Do not use team metrics to track individual performance. DORA and flow metrics are team metrics. They measure the health of the system, not individuals. There is an interesting story from the booking.com, and their goal was to implement an AI-assisted code review and track generally the GitHub Copilot adoption. I think most of the companies has passed through these stages over the recent few years. In this situation, they used the coach approach. They basically did it in a full transparency to the whole team who was involved. They not only showed, but they basically collected the team and together with them, they defined in designing this system and they created an aggregated team level metrics. The result was 16% productivity uplift from the AI tools. And they also had a developer satisfaction together with this. This is what ethical monitoring looks like. And Booking.com just proved that transparency and involvement are separate, can separate coach from a controller. Okay, we've talked about the scary stuff. We've talked about the lawsuits and other things. We've talked about the success stories. But the question remains, what are you personally going to do about it on this Friday afternoon? Because whether you like it or not, these tools are coming. The AI is already here. The question is not, can we stop it, but can we shape it? I want to leave some suggestions for you. Depending on who you are, an engineer or a manager, or maybe you are even the one who is building the AI tool, or maybe I inspired you by this talk to build an AI tool. You need to do this responsibly. And let's start with the people who are doing the real work, the engineers. First thing is don't hide. The natural reaction to surveillance always is go into the dark, to buy a mouse jiggler or to write a script, as I said before. And I can understand this impulse, but this is a losing game. You cannot outperform a robot, out-robot this robot. Instead, demand the context. If your manager shows you a metric, hey, your commit volume is down, don't get defensive. Give them a context. Say, yes, commits are down because I spent 3 days maybe refactoring legacy authentication model so it doesn't crash on our Black Friday day. Try to educate your boss. Most managers don't want to be controllers. They're just anxious. Help them understand that lines of code is a bad metric. Show them DORA metrics. Teach them how you want to be measured. And this is the most important part in this deck. For managers, stop asking if this person is working. This is a lazy question. This is a question for probably a babysitter, not a leader. Start asking if this process is working, if the system is working. Shift your viewpoint from the individual to a system. If a developer is idle, is it because they are lazy, or is it because they are waiting for hours for a QA environment to spin up? Be transparent. If you turn on monitoring tool, tell this to your team and tell them why. Just say that you are tracking this to find the bottlenecks, not to fire people. If you hide the tool, you are destroying the trust. And once trust is gone, no amount of AI can bring it back. And finally, if you are the one who is building these tools, you have a choice. You can build a bossware. You can build these tools that sell fear and insecure to these insecure managers. And that will probably it will make you money in the short term, yeah. Or you can try to find and build a coachware, build tools that highlight friction, but not the failures. Build these tools that protect the privacy by default. Build tools that assume that employees want to do a good job. Because if you build a tool that treats people like robots, eventually they will leave and you will be left with nothing but the robots. And maybe just a few words before I wrap up my talk. We can have a future where AI helps us work better, smarter, and with less burnout. But we have to choose that path intentionally.